We are going to give you a step-by-step guide on how to make a 15-minute presentation. So take some notes, think about how you're going to do it, and let's get rolling. There are 5 important questions that you want to answer when you're making a research presentation based on your empirical research paper. The first is, what is your research question and why is it important? 2, what is your contribution to the existing literature? 3, what data and methods are used to answer the question? 4, what is the answer? And 5, what does the answer mean? Now, these should also be the 5 points of your paper or the 5 sections within your paper. But here we want to be very clear that we can answer these 5 questions. And so when we think about the organization of the slides, they're designed to help us answer these questions. To help us answer those 5 questions, we're going to focus on creating 6 slides that answer parts of those questions. The first slide is your title slide, and it should be very clear with your title, what is your research question? And if not with your title, then during your first slide, post the title of your paper and then use your words to explain what your research question is. The second slide should focus on answering the question of what is your contribution. You can talk about what is known on this topic by providing a brief, very brief, literature review. You can cite the most important articles. You can also point out how is your approach different than these other papers. The third slide should then focus on the data. What data to use? How was it collected? Why is this the right data to answer your question? Go ahead and start introducing and talking about what the data is in preparation for getting to the next slide. Once we've talked about the data, we can then talk about what method will you use. All right, understand your audience. If you're talking to a group of econometricians or economists, then use economic terms. If you're not talking to economists, then can you describe the intuition of your method and describe why this intuition makes this method correct? If you're talking to non-group of economists, probably don't go into the Gauss-Markov assumptions. Fifth, your results. Think of the best way to present your results. Don't just put up a regression table from your OutReg 2. Think about, can you be a little creative? Can you show your results? And then with your words, can you interpret the results for the audience? And your final slide should be your conclusion. What does your answer mean? Are there policy implications? What do we learn? Why was this important to do this research? Use your words to explain and to conclude, not just summarize, but to conclude your research and maybe even give suggestions for the next questions to answer. So with those 6 slides, you should be able to create a 15-minute presentation. And that means you'll talk about 2 minutes per slide. The other thing I really want to encourage you to think about is that those are just guidelines. Be flexible, show your personality, your creativity. Maybe you're going to have 2 slides on the data section, maybe 3 slides on results. Whatever that is, think about being flexible to show your voice in the presentation. When you're creating those slides, PowerPoint's a very useful tool to use for that. The advice, keep things simple. You might want to spend a lot of time adding a lot of graphics, a lot of colors, a lot of different things. Keep it simple for the audience. You want the audience to be able to listen to you and easily see what you're talking about. You don't want them to have to read and listen to you at the same time because that's not very effective. So keep your slides simple and not too colorful. Use contrasts. So if you're going to do a dark background, use light wording. This presentation uses a light background and uses dark wording. Use fewer words, use pictures, figures, and tables to tell the story that you're trying to tell with your presentation. Now let's see if I put into practice what I just said. So here's a slide. Now I could read this slide as presenting, or I can talk about it, but because there's a lot of words on this slide, it might not help you listen to me, and you might be trying to read the slide instead. So rather than this, I can use the same information, but use this slide. So the key to any presentation is to practice, practice, practice. So the question you might ask is, well, should I write down what I'm going to say? My advice is yes. Write down your script beforehand, but never use your script during your presentation. Use it to practice, but not to present. Use a mirror. Harry Potter would spend hours in front of this mirror. Maybe you're not going to spend hours, but do spend significant time practicing in front of the mirror. Look at your mannerisms, your hand gestures. What do you do with your hands? Where do you look? Practice in front of a mirror. As you're practicing, you might make a mistake. If you do, breathe. The mistake will seem a lot bigger to you than it will to others. Presenters make mistakes all the time. They might misspeak, mispronounce, or do some other type of miss. In that case, pause and breathe, and then continue. Use the pause button when needed. Pauses seem like to the presenter like they go on for hours, but to the audience they don't. So when you need to, just pause, regroup, and continue with your presentation. So we can keep talking about how to present, but I'd like to give you an example, and this might be a good or bad example, see if you can identify, of a 15-minute presentation. Now I'm going to go a little faster, not go into as much detail so it doesn't take 15 minutes, but just look at the slides and how I address this approach to maybe give you an example of what you can do for your presentation. My name is Joshua Price from Southern Utah University, and today I'm going to present to you research titled Nudging Students Toward College, the Effectiveness of Using Financial Aid Information as a Nudge. The college admission and financial aid is a very uncertain and complex process. Many times you apply to college before even knowing the financial aid package of what you might receive. And there's a lot of other obstacles and hurdles that come through when applying for college and financial aid. As a result, many universities and researchers have tried to use informational nudges designed to help students navigate this process. Informational nudges take many different forms, but part of it is just presenting information in a unique way that will get the individual to act upon the information received. One of the biggest examples was the Michigan Hale Scholarship. This was a scholarship targeted at high-achieving and low-income students. So to help students apply to the University of Michigan, these high-achieving, low-income students were sent messages and notified that they were accepted to the University of Michigan and would receive free tuition if they attended. This informational nudge increased application and enrollment rates by a lot at the University of Michigan. And so my research builds upon this framework. The research question I'm going to ask is what happens when a university uses the Pell Grant as the source of funding attached to an informational nudge and not university scholarship dollars like they did in the Hale Scholarship program. So to answer this question, I conducted an experiment at a large public regional university. This was focused on high-achieving students within the state where that university resided. Students were randomly assigned to receive an informational nudge about the potential cost to college. And these students in the experiment received this information directly from the university. Now here's the letters or the informational nudge that the students received. The control group were given automatic admission into the university and then provided useful links that they could click and go to, individuals they could call to learn more about the financial aid decision to attend the university. In the treatment group, the informational nudge was very salient. We list the tuition of the university along with the estimated Pell Grant and then the expected cost to the student, again highlighting that the cost to attend if qualified for a Pell Grant would be mere hundreds of dollars and not thousands. And so to test the effectiveness of this treatment, we wanted to look at several different outcomes of these individuals. We wanted to look to see if they applied to the university, if they enrolled in the university, and if eventually they completed a FAFSA. And so this is the regression model we looked at, where we looked at those three outcomes, and we regressed that on the key variable of treatment. And because treatment was randomly assigned, we should have a causal effect here. And just to control for potential confounding factors, we also include fixed effects for zip code to compare two individuals who live in the relatively close geographical regions. We're going to look at three key outcomes. The first is, did they apply to the university? This coefficient on the treatment, 0.020, says that those who received the treatment were 2 percentage points more likely to apply. Now, those in the control group were 12.7% likely to apply. And so this is a 2 percentage increase off of 12.7% base. That's a pretty large increase. So we show that this informational nudge did nudge students to apply to the university. The second outcome we looked at was, did they enroll at another university or enroll at the university? And we find no impact that having that treatment actually induced students to enroll at the university. Now, maybe with this new information, they might apply to and enroll at another university. We also show that this treatment did not have any impact on whether they enrolled at another university across the country. Now, we don't have a lot of information on these students, but in order to send the letter, we did have information on their address. So we were able to use their address to look to see were there differential impacts based on potential family income. Because the Pell Grant is what we're using, those that are lower to middle income are more likely to receive a Pell Grant than those that are higher income. As a result, we collected data from Zillow to create a proxy variable for family income, and this was the Zillow estimate of their home. We can then look at the impact of the treatment for those that are low, middle, and upper class based on the value of their home. This picture shows the 4 different categories we looked at. The first category are those that have missing data in Zillow. These are most likely going to be rural PO boxes as well as apartment complexes. Then we have those that live in homes under $200,000, those that live in homes between $200,000 and $300,000, and those that live in homes that are above $300,000. The biggest impacts we find are amongst those that have missing or under $200,000 homes. So for those with missing addresses or missing Zillow, which is most likely apartments, we saw a 4 percentage point increase in the probability of applying to college. Amongst those that live in under $200,000 homes and most likely to be qualified for a full Pell Grant, we see over a 5 percentage point increase in the probability that they apply to college. So to summarize our results, what we find is that this informational nudge had an impact on increasing application rates, particularly among those students that are most likely to qualify for a Pell Grant. But it had no impact on them actually completing the FAFSA or enrolling in college. So why is that? Why would this intervention have an impact on application but not on future decisions? What we find in the research and what's proposed here in this study is that the most successful informational nudges are accompanied by clear and quick actions. When students received this letter in the mail, they could go to the website and immediately apply to the university within minutes. But in order to act upon the information, to actually enroll in the university, took months and even took a lot of additional work to make sure that you're fully enrolled. And that can be challenging. And there weren't any guidance given to help them overcome those obstacles. Furthermore, filling out a FAFSA and applying for a Pell Grant can be a burdensome process. While we gave them information, we didn't do anything to give them assistance in acting upon that information. And so where we see that we provided information and made it a clear and quick action, we see impact, specifically the application. But future interventions should not just be geared at providing informational nudges, but also on the supportive process to help them act upon those nudges. So that was an example of a short presentation based on academic research. Now, I could have added more detail to take up the full 15 minutes, but at the core of that presentation were those 6 slides. And by going through those 6 slides, I answered those 5 questions that every presentation should be able to answer very clearly. Now that you are going to embark upon making your own presentation, I encourage you, review your paper, think about your audience, and spend some time on creating those slides. You can do this.